My fellow bassists, welcome back. In this month's Patreon poll, the winner was using music theory to create bass lines, and so in today's lesson, I'm going to show you some classic techniques for writing awesome bass lines. To make things more interesting, I'll be teaching you these techniques by analysing one of the most beautiful bass lines of all time, Something by the Beatles with Paul McCartney on bass. By the end of this video, you'll know where to use root notes versus chord tones or passing notes, where to keep things simple versus where to add complexity, and also how to use rhythmic activity to create tension and release. So let's take a look at the first phrase of this bass line. Okay, so in general, Paul is following a lot of the cardinal rules of bass lines. He usually hits the root note on beat 1 of each measure, and then moves between chords using a combination of passing tones and chord tones. 90% of the time, it's a good idea to hit the root note on beat 1 of each measure because that's going to give the song a really solid foundation, and it's also just what the rest of the band is expecting you to do. Having said that though, Paul does make one exception where he hits the G in bar 2 on beat 1, which is actually the 5th of the C major 7 chord. He probably did this because the first 3 bars all have C as the root of the chord, so he probably used the 5th and went to G there just to make things sound a bit more interesting. If you have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about right now, you might want to check out this video where I explain some of the fundamentals of music theory. Another classic technique that Paul uses in this first phrase is to keep things more simple at the start of each measure and then introduce some more rhythmic and melodic complexity in the second half of the measure. This is a really great tension and release method. When you introduce more rhythmic activity and use notes that are further away from the root, like other chord tones or passing notes, it creates this sense of anticipation and tension which then gets resolved at the start of the next bar when you just play a single root note that lasts for a beat or more. Paul definitely doesn't follow this rule religiously, but he does use it as his kind of default method with some exceptions here and there. Alright, let's have a look at the next phrase. Okay, this might be my favorite moment in the entire bass line. That counter melody is so beautiful, even though he's basically just running down an A minor scale. It sounds really nice because it's being played over the tense A minor major 7th chord behind it. If you're wondering what on earth an A minor major 7th chord is, well, just think of the last chord on the James Bond theme, and it sounds like that. And if you don't know what that is, well, it sounds like this. It's a really cool and mysterious chord that involves the root, minor 3rd, 5th, and major 7th. The only other thing I'll say about this phrase is that Paul follows another rule of cardinal bass playing, which is play your fills when the vocalist or lead instrument is not playing. Have a listen again and notice how the bass line becomes more active when there's a gap in the melody. By the way, if you want to learn about how other legendary bassists write their bass lines, that's exactly what I teach in my course Mastering the Masters. I cover the techniques and secrets of 10 amazing bassists like Pino Palladino, Victor Wooten, and Flea. So if you want to be able to write amazing bass lines as fast as possible, just make sure to tap the link below before midnight on August 18th to get half off the course. Okay, so after the first verse, we get another verse where the bass line is pretty much the same with just some subtle variations here and there. The only major change comes at the end where we modulate from C major to A major. Let's have a listen to that now. So as we transition into the bridge, Paul plays this A major phrase with constant 16th notes. This bar is probably one of the most unexpected in the whole song because we're all of a sudden in A major, and Paul creates a lot of anticipation here by using constant 16th notes, which is something that we haven't seen in the rest of the bass line, and also a chromatic approach when he goes from D sharp to E. In general, playing more notes, especially if you've always been playing sparsely before that, and using chromaticism are both techniques for creating a lot of tension and anticipation, and it's really good to do this right before you go into a new section, which brings us to the bridge. The main technique here is a high motif played alongside descending root notes. So the high motif is just this slide up and down by a major second. And the descending root notes are just walking down the A major scale. So combine them together and you get this. Each time you hear that high motif, it still works with whatever chord the rest of the band is playing. It starts out as the 5th and major 6th of the chord. Then it becomes the minor 7th and the root. And then it becomes the root and the major 2nd or major 9th. So you don't actually have to modify that motif at all in order for it to work over all of those chords. It just has a slightly different quality and a slightly different function each time. The second half of the bridge is pretty much exactly the same, except now you play it down an octave. Simply changing the octave that you're playing in, but basically playing the exact same bass line, is a really good way to vary things without too much effort. And in general, playing things up in a higher register creates a little bit more tension because now the song lacks that really solid low foundation that you would otherwise be providing. Okay, so we've covered all of the main sections of the song now. I want to show you how to write a bass line in this kind of style. Firstly, make sure to download the chord chart and the backing track using the link below. One of the hardest things about writing music is that you have infinite options and it feels like you have no clue what direction to go in. And so because of that, I'm going to give you some parameters to work with based on what we've observed in Paul's bass line. The first rule is to hit the root note on beat 1 of each measure. Then use chord tones or passing notes to move between the chords. Keep things simple at the start of each measure and then make it more complex in the second half. And finally, use 16th notes at the ends of phrases, especially in bars 6 and 10 in the chord chart. Next to each measure, I'm going to show you the chord tones just so that you know which notes you're targeting, but feel free to use passing notes to move between those chord tones. Here's a quick example of the kind of bass line I might play over these chords using the parameters that I've given you. So there you go. I hope this video helps you understand what's going on in Paul's legendary bass line on something. Most of these techniques are actually pretty easy to implement. You just need to know when and where to implement them, and that just comes with a lot of practicing and learning many different bass lines. Mastering the masters makes it much easier for you to do that because every lesson comes with an exercise along with high quality tabs and backing tracks to help you learn in the most musical way possible. So if you want to write bass lines like a pro, just tap the link below before midnight on August 18th to get half off the course. Thanks so much for coming here and learning with me. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video.